Hello and welcome to Cyber Life. My name is Ken Underhill, your host. Cyber Life is a place where you can come learn about cybersecurity topics. It's a place where we showcase the men and women behind the scenes of the industry, and a place where you can learn the things you need to know to help protect yourself, your family, and your business. In Cyber Life, we believe it's more than just about the technology, it's about the human element. In today's episode, we have several special guests, and we'll be talking about threat intelligence. Hello, and welcome back to Cyber Life. My name is Ken Underhill, your host. In today's episode, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about threat intelligence. And we need to figure out what threat intelligence is. So before we get into our actual hands-on, we're going to learn from Chris Cochran and Ron Eddings, who are the co-founders of Hacker Valley Studio Podcast. Both of these guys are threat intelligence experts. So we're going to find out, Ron and Chris, what is threat intelligence?
Threat intelligence is the tradecraft of collecting, analyzing, and disseminating threat information from your threat environment, providing that context to the stakeholders within your company to prevent and mitigate threats in your environment.
Threat intelligence is context. It's context that we can use and leverage to better protect ourselves and to also gain more insight about our adversary. We can use information from industry peers. We can use information from threat data feeds. Really, any type of context that can help you answer a security-related question is threat intelligence.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Chris and Ron, for sharing that information with us. Welcome back to Cyber Life. My name is Ken Underhill, your host. Before the break, we learned what threat intelligence actually is from a couple of industry experts. Now, we're going to use some candy to learn what threat intelligence actually is and make it a little more fun. So with me, I have my lovely spouse. Hello, spouse.
Hi.
So we're going to start off with talking about threat intelligence, and we're going to talk about a game. So before Xbox, before PlayStation, in the ancient days when I was young, there was this game called Connect 4. And so with this game, you had different colored little circles, and you see them here, the red and yellow circles. So if we look at this in the aspect of a network, a computer network, and all a network is a way for us to communicate, kind of like we're talking now. That's all a computer network is. And now they get really big, right, especially with the cloud. But for our purposes, it's just a way for us to communicate information. So if we think of it in that context, if we think of every one of these little circles as a piece of information, this allows us to learn about threat intelligence. So we've got red, we've got yellow, and there's other colors. And we'll talk about this other stuff we have on the table here in a second. But we have Connect 4. And so if we look at this from a threat intelligence standpoint, we have different pieces of data. Now, some of that data is good. So let's just say that's the yellow data here. Some of that data is bad. That might be the red data, right? That might be that malicious data. It could be that malicious hacker trying to get into our company's network and steal our information. It may not seem like a big deal. You may say, well, if they steal your information, that's not a big deal. Maybe you can stop them or something. But when you look at studies out there and you see that the average cost here in the US of a data breach is over $8 million, that's a pretty big deal for most business owners. In fact, most business owners out there can't sustain a hit of $8 million. So that's why threat intelligence is so important. Does that make sense?
It does, yes.
Okay, perfect. I actually heard that you play Connect 4 sometimes. Is that true?
I'm a champion.
The champion. Okay. Have you ever lost to anyone?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, yeah. We'll leave it as that. So, no champion ever loses. So again, Connect 4 was just a simple way for us to learn a little bit about threat intelligence. Let's actually take a little closer look with some of this other stuff we have on the table here. So I'm going to use these beads we have, and I'm just going to pour some in my hand. You'll notice that different colored beads, just like the little chips for Connect 4, we have different colored beads. So as we look at our network data, these packets of data, so that's what is transmitting across our network, little packets of data. Have you ever mailed a letter?
Yes,
before?
of course.
Okay, in the letter, it goes in an envelope, right? So you
Right.
send it that way. Or if you order off Amazon, you get a beautiful package in the mail from Amazon Prime. By the way, if you don't have Prime, I love it. Get stuff there really quickly. But that's what our network packets are, right? They're just packets of data. So inside of these packets are all the data. Some of the data we don't necessarily care about, but a lot of it we do, right? And we don't want these criminal hackers getting that information. So all of these different pieces of data might be different colored for our purposes, or different colors, right? We've got red, we've got kind of a purple and white, we've got green. And so we want to look in that data with tools like SIM tools, so security information event manager tools, things like Splunk, for example, one of the tools out there. We use all these different technology tools to look at all this data. Now, we don't have a whole lot in this little cup here, right? We don't have a whole lot of data. But the average network has millions, if not billions, of pieces of data at any given time, right? Traveling across it. I can't look at all that data, can you?
No.
That's a whole lot. So we use tools to do that, and they try to make sense of the data. And then as humans and analysts will look at the data and try to determine, did an incident actually happen? So for us, we're going to have...
green.
Yes, so the green is our good data. Let's say
good
green
data.
is good. Cool?
Cool.
All right, so we got our good data.
Right.
But what if there's an evil hacker in there? Oh no. Oh, they're probably red data. So is there any red data in there?
We have
Oh
three
no.
of them.
Oh, we got a lot of hackers. Oh goodness. Criminal hackers, let me just say that, right? There's a lot of good hackers out there. So we found our bad data. We found some bad data. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is malicious, right? It could just be that it's an anomaly, that is some data that we didn't, when we set up our tools on our network, we didn't really understand exactly how the network worked, or it was just a piece of data, kind of a fluke or something like that, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, and that's why we as humans at some point will analyze that data and make sure it's actually good. The thing about threat intelligence, where a lot of people make a mistake, they think it's just aggregating all this information and looking through it. But as we heard from Ron and Chris, the data has to be meaningful, right? And meaningful for me is probably different from you, right? We like different things.
Right.
She likes shrimp, I hate shrimp. So it's meaningful for that individual or that organization. So we can put the beads back in there now. We're going to move on to the fun stuff, candy. So let's talk about some candy now. We'll just move that out of our way here. So we've got a lot of different candy. And before we jump into the candy, I'm going to share a story real quick. So many years ago, when I was a medic in the military, I volunteered at a Boy Scout camp. And so I volunteered as a medic there. And a lot of the children would cry, oh, I want mommy or daddy, whatever, right? They're sad because they're not used to being away from home. And I gave them lemon drops as a magic pill. So what I would do is I would tell them like, okay, well, you know what? I would ask them questions, right? Okay, how you feeling? Oh, why are you crying? Oh, you miss your mom? Okay. Well, I actually have just a pill for you. Now you have to take 2 of these a day, and they're going to taste sugary and kind of lemony because I like them to have good flavor for you, because who really likes to take medicine, right? And so I would give them these lemon drop pills, right? And they would all of a sudden feel better, right? Because a lot of that stuff you just need a placebo type of thing for. So that's my story on lemon drops, and that's why I made sure to add them here. So we have, just like with the beads, we have different pieces of data here. We have some pink jelly beans. We have some green ones. Do you like jelly beans?
Yeah, what would be the dangerous color?
Well, why don't you eat one, and then I'll tell you which ones are the dangerous color.
No.
So here, it's whatever we want, right? Because it doesn't necessarily mean based off of color, right? Because when we look at a network packet, it's not going to be blue and green and yellow and all these fun things. But for our purposes, we can just pretend that maybe the lemon drops are evil in this case, right? Not if you're using them to trick children into feeling better about being at camp.
That's
but
not evil.
That's not evil at all. We're not tricking children with lemon drops. We're just helping them cope. So that's what we're doing there. So threat intelligence, again, has to be meaningful, right? So let's say that I liked lemon drops, but I didn't like jelly beans, right? And I actually don't like jelly beans, FYI. So I want to find the data that's meaningful for me. So for me, in this bucket, the meaningful data is lemon drops.
Right.
What do you think is a meaningful data for you in this bucket?
Probably the pink. I like the pink.
Okay.
The jelly beans, because I like jelly beans.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can eat some if you want.
That's okay.
Okay. We'll eat it after the show. So in here, though, you see we've just got so much data, right? As we talked about earlier, there's so much data. And I actually just gave away a surprise. Let me hide that again real quick. So in here, there's some things with our little cards. So the cards are actually going to be our evil data. I gave away that surprise. You got to see one of them. So you found one, but now you have to dig in there through all of your data and find the other card. Because again, as a threat intelligence person, you've got all this data to look at. You need to find out what doesn't fit.
Okay.
And we've got a bowl full of candy here, right? So yeah, it's lemon drops, yeah, it's jelly beans, but candy fits in this bowl, right? Because we've got a lot of candy.
Okay.
Playing cards don't fit in this bowl, right?
Right.
that make sense?
Yes, it is.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to let my threat intelligence expert here go ahead and dig through this bowl and see how many playing cards she can find in here, because the playing cards will represent our malicious data, or the data that we need to look at a little further. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean it's malicious, but just something we want to take a little closer look at.
How many I'm looking for?
I can't tell you that. You got to figure it out. That's the joy of threat intelligence, right? You don't know everything you have to find. There's just an unlimited number. Now, of course, we have a small bowl here, so there's a pretty finite number of playing cards that might be in there. So we'll let her keep going here and see if she finds the other ones in there. And she's digging around and digging around. And you just never know, right? With threat intelligence, you never know what you may find on your network. And you may not know what it's hidden in. And again, I'm not going to tell her the number of cards in here. So she's got to keep looking and see if she finds more.
On the table?
Huh?
No, I can't spill it out on the table. Wouldn't that be easier?
Well, we don't want to make a mess in the studio here. It would be easier, but you know what? Unfortunately, threat intelligence people will tell you it's not always easy. Sometimes it takes a lot of work to figure things out, and sometimes you might miss things. So we'll keep digging in here.
I don't see
All right, you don't see any more? Okay, so are we comfortable with 2 being our final answer?
Yes.
All right, so there are 2 cards in here, so I just wanted to keep it a little spicy and make sure. So we've got 2 jokers here because honestly, criminal hackers are a bunch of jokers, right? They break into other people's stuff and steal it, and that's not cool. So that's an example of threat intelligence, right? We dig through that data and we find what actually makes sense and what's meaningful for us. Ready to move on to the next thing of candy?
Sure,
All right.
Sure.
So we have this candy here, and just so you can all see it, kind of made it like little chemistry or DNA models or something like that. This is my fancy artwork, so you can buy this online. I'll have some of this listed there. $10,000 a pop for this type of artwork. So what we're just representing here, though, is how the data is connected, right? So when it comes to our network, we're going to see all these packets, and it's going to aggregate, et cetera, in our SIM tools and other tools. And here you can see that, let's say the red represents our bad data, which we need to take a closer look at, or that anomaly type of data. This is what that represents. However, you see it's connected to other things, right? Or it might be connected to other things. So we need to be able to sift through all this and find the stuff that we actually care about. So that's what these models are for, and also so you can snack on them later if you want to. We have a couple different models here just to kind of represent that stuff. So you see here that we can learn threat intelligence to some capacity without actually having to do anything, right? Where we can just learn from candy and things around the house. So when you're teaching like your children, for example, just put stuff together, right? Like whatever you have around the house. If you have a bag of potatoes, you can teach them about threat intelligence and cut the potatoes different ways for them to learn from. Now let's move on to what you will call your favorite thing. So typically, also in threat intelligence, and a lot of people don't know this, this is a trade secret, we bedazzle network packets. So we have our bedazzler stuff here, and we don't necessarily really like go out and get a bedazzle thing and like slap it on our servers or anything like that. Or if you're serverless, you don't mail it to Amazon AWS and have them put it on their servers. But we look at the information, we say, hey, that doesn't look right, and we flag it, right? So we flag it with our bedazzly stuff, and she really likes these shiny little bedazzly things.
So what does this represent?
So this is representing the data packets after we've looked at the information, right? So not just data packets, but after we looked at all the information coming across our network. And again, in the aspect of bedazzling, if anyone remembers those, you would bedazzle your shirt and you'd have all these glittery, shiny things on this shirt. I never did that. Confession, I never bedazzled my stuff, I swear it. But some people did back in the day. And so this is just representing what we've done with the data after the fact, right? So when we...
different colors.
Yep, I knew you would ask that question. Great question. So we've got to put the data someplace, right? We've got to have a system in place to actually be able to say, well, this is good, this is bad, this needs more attention, this is really, really bad. Hey, we just had a breach, right, type of bad. Or there's an incident, we need to investigate it further and do some forensics or whatever. So that's what these represent, right? So based off what we found, so for example, let's say it was really, really bad stuff. And we said, all right, well, you know what? When we determine that's really bad and we tuck it away where we need to tuck it, that's going to be purple, right? So that's what purple represents. But we looked at other data and like the jelly beans, we're like, oh, well, that's good, right? That's good stuff. That's green, right? So we characterize it as green. So we bedazzled it as green. So if you're out there analyzing network packets right now, just think in your head, I need to bedazzle stuff, right? That's all you're doing. You're bedazzling it. So when people ask you, what do? I bedazzle network packets, right? Like, how cool is that? Just tell people that, and that'll start a good conversation. So that's what we're talking about there. Any questions at all on threat
When
intelligence?
you find that this is bad, what do you do with it? How do you remove it from the other jewels?
I give it the problem to somebody else. But what that other person does is they'll actually either do forensic investigation or incident response is really what we're looking for there. So when we find that really bad packet and we say, this is malicious, something happened, right? There was an incident happened. We would do an incident response process based off your organization. And from there, it might be you doing it as part of the team, or it might be passed over to the incident response team if you're just like a SOC analyst or something, and not just a SOC analyst, but if you're a SOC analyst, something like that. So it goes through a process to determine, like, was this actually an incident? Did something really occur? Was there data loss? Do we need to involve legal? Do we need to call the feds? Like, what do we need to do, right? Do we need to involve law enforcement and stuff like that? So there's a process after the fact, but we won't be covering it in this episode. Hello and welcome back to Cyber Life. My name is Ken Underhill, your host. Before the break, we did some great hands-on activities to learn threat intelligence. Again, you can use this type of stuff or anything you have around the house to help educate your family about it. Now, we're going to talk to Ron and Chris again. We talked a little bit about manually doing threat intelligence, which is absolutely no fun. We dug in candy and stuff, and that stuff's fun, but in real life, it's not fun to do a manual process. So Chris and Ron, what is threat intel automation?
Threat intel automation is how you save yourself a lot of time and heartache. You'll often find yourself bogged down by just the sheer amount of information from data feeds, social media, and your peers. There is so much context about the threat, but what can we do with it? We can take that context and begin to automate it. And how we can do this is by automating the collection of threat intelligence. We can automatically go out to our data feeds and collect them and then process them in some type of way. Maybe we have specific analyst tradecraft or logic that we want to take out of someone's mind and put into programming logic. So we can often think of looking at a Visio diagram and taking the output from one box and using it as input for the next box. This is kind of essential for threat intelligence programs to scale and enhance their capabilities. And if you're curious about what are some of the things that we can automate using threat intelligence, we can automate quite a few use cases like phishing, malware infection, data loss prevention, and even the onboarding and offboarding of employees as it happens.
Excellent. So thanks, guys. I appreciate that. We learned about what threat intel automation is. Hello and welcome back to Cyber Life. My name is Ken Underhill, your host. Before the break, we learned about what threat intel automation is, and before that, we also did some hands-on activities in threat intel intelligence. So now I want to go back to Chris and Ron. And a lot of times when you work in threat intelligence or as a SOC analyst or cybersecurity analyst or any number of individuals and job roles where you're looking at a lot of data all the time, you can get burnt out a lot. You can feel underappreciated in your job. So I really want to talk to Chris and Ron about upgrading the human. So do you guys have any perspective on that?
So for many years, we've been upgrading layers 1 through 7, but we also talk about layer 8. Layer 8 is the human. And we always talk about layer 8 as a joke. We say, oh, it must be a layer 8 issue. But we need to change that focus a little bit because we can upgrade ourselves tenfold by learning, focusing on our health, and also thinking about how we operate in the cybersecurity space. So really thinking about how do we optimize ourselves? How do we learn, meta learning? How do we, take care of our bodies and our energy? Because we are mental athletes with no off season, much like a chess master. They sit and they concentrate hard on their game for hours on end, and we do that during incidents. So how do we maintain that energy? How do we maintain that focus as we go through our incident? And that is how we focus on building the human.
Yeah, there's a notion in security that we follow, and it's all about upgrading software to protect and create a more secure environment. but we often forget about upgrading ourselves as the human. There's so much that we can do to make ourselves better, which is ultimately going to make our lives and securing our organization better. What are some of the things that we can do? We can seek out mentorship from other industry experts. We can take time for ourselves and take breaks in between our work so we're not constantly getting bogged down. There is a huge trend of analyst fatigue. That is a big problem in our industry. And we need to start focusing on that by allowing the humans to take time for themselves. And also, there's this aspect of continuous learning that comes with security. Technology is constantly evolving. The threat is evolving even faster. So we have to spend time researching, taking courses, and studying to stay on top of the technology and the threat.
Hello and welcome back to Cyber Life. My name is Ken Underhill, your host. Ron and Chris have shared some great information with us today about threat intelligence. We also learned through Candy as well, which is always going to bring a smile to your face. I wanted to give a quick plug to Ron and Chris and let them talk a little bit about their podcast. They have a podcast called Hacker Valley Studio, very popular cybersecurity podcast, and they're really trying to work towards improving diversity in the industry as well as helping showcase individuals that otherwise wouldn't get a voice. So Chris and Ron, can you just tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Hacker Valley Studio is a podcast where we focus on the human element of cybersecurity. Chris was just describing upgrading the human, and we've brought that to an audience at scale. We've interviewed industry experts and practitioners and really took a peek underneath of what's under the hood there. How did they learn? How do they stay on top of threats? And how do they continuously grow and enhance themselves?
Hacker Valley Studio is our podcast. It's our baby to amplify and project diverse voices from all around the world in all walks of life. There are so many lessons that we can learn from other individuals, even outside of cybersecurity. So we bring on experts, we bring on authors and statisticians and scientists to talk about what their research and what their life's work is, and we apply it to cybersecurity. And that's what we talk about at Hacker Valley Studio.
Hello and welcome back to Cyber Life. My name is Ken Underhill, your host. We had such a great episode today about threat intelligence. So again, a big thanks to Ron, Chris, as well as my spouse for coming on the show. We got to also play with candy because who doesn't like that, right? We all like candy a little bit. Be sure to connect with us at Cyber Life. You can go to cyberlife.tv. You can find us on Twitter at The Real Cyber Life. You can find us even on YouTube at Cyber Life TV and connect with us on LinkedIn at Cyber Life. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode.